The holographic displays flickered with damning evidence, satellite imagery, geological scans, and resource extraction logs that painted humanity's actions in the harshest light possible. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood absolutely still, her posture rigid but not defeated. The massive circular chamber of the Galactic Council seemed to pulse with alien hostility, each representative's form more exotic and alien than the last. To her left, the crystalline body of the Zornak delegate shimmered with angry chromatic shifts. Beside him, the methane-breathing Krell-Theri representative's respirator clicked rhythmically, a sound that seemed to punctuate each accusation. The quantum archivists of Proxima Centauri, beings of pure energy contained in intricate quantum lattices, hummed with a frequency that suggested absolute contempt. The moon of Kepler 452 bits was designated as a preservation zone, droned Archon Krelvax, his multiple tentacles unfurling in a gesture of imperial dismissal. Your species has not only violated the most fundamental interstellar preservation protocols, but has demonstrated a complete disregard for galactic ecological balance. Elena knew the real crime. It wasn't about the moon. It was about potential. The moon in question, a seemingly barren rock orbiting a marginal exoplanet, had been transformed. What the Council saw as destruction, humanity saw as opportunity. Using experimental terraforming technologies developed by a consortium of Earth's most brilliant minds, they had begun converting the moon's toxic atmosphere and mineral-poor landscape into a living, breathing ecosystem. Dr. Marcus Chen, Earth's primary diplomatic representative, stepped forward. Unlike Elena's military bearing, Chen embodied a different kind of strength, intellectual and measured. The preservation zones were established centuries ago, he began, his voice calm but carrying a steel-like undertone. Those protocols were created when most species were still struggling with basic interstellar travel. Humanity has developed technologies that can revive dead worlds, create sustainable environments where life was previously impossible. A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber. Some were sounds of derision, others of barely concealed curiosity. The quantum archivist representative, a being that could process millennia of information in microseconds, spoke next. Its voice was a series of complex mathematical equations that translated into language. Potential for life is not justification for unilateral transformation. The ecological networks are delicate. Your species demonstrates a pattern of aggressive expansion without consideration of broader consequences. Elena's mind raced. This wasn't just about the moon. This was about control, about maintaining the existing power structures that had defined galactic politics for millennia. Her neural implant, a cutting-edge piece of technology that most alien species considered barbaric, processed the diplomatic exchange in real time. Micro-expressions, quantum fluctuations in the chamber's emotional resonance, subtle diplomatic tells that would escape most observers. All of it was being analyzed, cataloged, predicted. "We do not seek permission," Elena responded, her voice cutting through the chamber's tension. "We seek progress." The words hung in the air, a declaration that was both a challenge and a promise. Archon Krelvax's response was immediate. "Then you shall seek that progress elsewhere. Earth is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. Your diplomatic credentials are revoked. Any further unauthorized terraforming or resource extraction will be considered an act of interstellar aggression." The chamber erupted. Holographic votes materialized, a unanimous decision of expulsion. Elena watched as centuries of human diplomatic efforts were erased in moments. As they were escorted out, Dr. Chen leaned close to Elena. "They've made a critical mistake," he whispered. The words were soft, but they carried the weight of strategic certainty. Elena knew exactly what he meant. The Galactic Council had just turned humanity into a force with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Outside the council chambers, the first phase of their true plan was already in motion. While the diplomatic theater played out, teams of scientists, engineers, and strategists were implementing protocols that would reshape everything the alien civilizations thought they knew about humanity. This wasn't an ending. This was a beginning. The underground facility beneath the Atacama Desert wasn't just a research center. It was humanity's crucible of innovation. Carved into solid rock and shielded by quantum interference fields, it represented the culmination of every black-budget project, every classified research initiative that had been brewing beneath the surface of human technological development. Dr. Maya Okoro stood before a holographic display that looked less like a scientific instrument and more like a living, breathing ecosystem of data. Her fingers danced across quantum-responsive interfaces, each movement sending ripples of computational energy through systems that defied conventional understanding. "We're not just building a communication network," she muttered to herself. "We're creating a nervous system for human expansion." Around her, teams worked with a fevered intensity that bordered on religious devotion. Aerospace engineers collaborated with quantum physicists. Genetic specialists worked alongside AI ethicists. The traditional boundaries of scientific disciplines had dissolved, replaced by a singular, desperate creativity. In a sealed chamber adjacent to Maya's workspace, a different kind of revolution was taking shape. Colonel Jamal Rodriguez, Alina's younger brother, was overseeing the development of what the team called adaptive combat intelligence. It wasn't just a weapons system. It was a living, learning network of defensive and offensive capabilities that could evolve faster than any known alien technology. "Traditional military doctrine is dead," Jamal explained to a group of veteran strategists and young recruits. "We're not building an army. We're building an organism. A collective intelligence that can respond to threats we can't even imagine yet." The recruitment had been surgical. No public calls, no traditional hiring processes. Every individual brought into the project was selected through a combination of psychological profiling, technological aptitude, and an almost indefinable quality of adaptive thinking. Dr. Marcus Chen moved between workstations, his role now less diplomatic and more of a strategic conductor. He understood that their current project was more than a response to their galactic expulsion. It was a fundamental reimagining of human potential. A soft alarm triggered, drawing Maya's attention to an anomalous data stream. Something was attempting to penetrate their quantum shields, an alien surveillance probe, more sophisticated than anything they'd encountered before. "Incoming," she called out, her voice calm despite the potential threat. The facility didn't panic. Instead, it transformed. Quantum adaptive camouflage systems activated, reshaping the facility's energy signature. What had been a research center became a computational ghost, its true nature indiscernible from background radiation and geological noise. Jamal's adaptive intelligence network went into overdrive. The incoming probe would find nothing, or something entirely unexpected. "Target neutralized," a young analyst reported, her voice carrying a hint of excitement. "Probe completely missiled. It's transmitting false coordinates back to its source." But Maya wasn't celebrating. Her attention was fixed on the data the probe had inadvertently revealed. Fragments of communication protocols, hints of tracking methodologies. Each piece of information was a weapon in their growing arsenal. "We're collecting more than we're defending," she told Chen. "Every attempt to monitor us is teaching us about them." Outside the facility, the Atacama Desert appeared unchanged, windswept, barren, indifferent to the revolutionary work happening beneath its surface. But inside, humanity was rewriting the rules of engagement. Chen watched a team of linguists and xenocommunication specialists working on something that looked like a cross between a translation matrix and a viral communication protocol. They weren't just learning alien languages. They were developing ways to communicate that would be fundamentally incomprehensible to the current galactic power structures. "Information is the first battlefield," Chen murmured, a phrase that had become something of a mantra in their underground world. Nearby, a group of young researchers were developing what they called cultural adaptation algorithms, AI systems designed to understand and predict alien societal behaviors at a depth never before attempted. It wasn't just about communication. It was about understanding. As the day progressed, the facility continued its work, No fanfare. No external indicators of the revolutionary potential being cultivated within its quantum-shielded walls. Humanity was preparing, not just for survival, but for something far more ambitious, a complete reconstruction of galactic civilization. The coffee shop in New Singapore looked unremarkable. Just another sleek, minimalist space in a city that prided itself on architectural innovation. But Dr. Aisha Nakamura wasn't here for the artisanal quantum-brewed coffee. Her fingers, seemingly idle on a quantum-encrypted tablet, were about to launch an economic revolution. Each tap was a calculated strike, a line of code that would ripple through galactic financial systems like a silent tsunami. The blockchain protocol she developed wasn't just a trading platform. It was a complete reimagining of interstellar economic exchange. Traditional galactic markets relied on complex, hierarchical systems controlled by established civilizations. Aisha's system would democratize economic opportunity in ways no one had imagined possible. Across the table sat Ziraak, a representative from the nomadic consortiums, a loose network of trading species that had long been marginalized by the Galactic Council. Her exoskeletal features were impossible to read, but the quantum adaptive translation implant caught the subtle vibrations of anticipation. "Your proposal," Ziraak clicked in their native communication pattern. "It challenges everything." Aisha smiled. That was precisely the point. Meanwhile, in a series of carefully orchestrated diplomatic encounters, a covert team of human negotiators was weaving a different kind of web. They weren't seeking traditional alliances. They were identifying the cracks in the galactic power structure. The forgotten civilizations, the oppressed trading networks, the technological have-nots. Kai Chen, a diplomatic strategist with a background in sinoanthropology, was meeting with representatives from the Rim worlds, a collection of resource-rich but politically ignored planetary systems. His approach was surgical. "We're not offering you protection," Kai explained to a delegation of Rim world leaders. "We're offering you a partnership of equals, technology exchange, economic sovereignty, the ability to write your own future." The offer was revolutionary. For centuries, these civilizations had been treated as economic vassals, their resources extracted by more powerful galactic entities. Humanity was presenting something entirely different, a chance to control their own destiny. Back in the New Singapore coffee shop, Aisha was finalizing the first implementation of her economic protocol. The system was designed to be more than a trading platform. It was a living, adaptive network that could route around economic blockades, create decentralized value chains, and provide economic agency to civilizations that had been systematically excluded. Her quantum adaptive algorithms were creating economic pathways that didn't just circumvent existing systems. They fundamentally reimagined them. A notification flickered across her encrypted tablet. The first test run was complete. In less than 17 minutes, her protocol had created more economic opportunity for 3 marginalized trading species than the Galactic Council had in the past century. Ziraak's communication implant translated a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are not just changing the system," they clicked. "You are dissolving it." Across different planets, in carefully selected meeting rooms and hidden communication nodes, humanity was conducting a different kind of warfare. Not with weapons, but with ideas, with technologies, with a fundamental reimagining of possibility. Dr. Marcus Chen reviewed the initial reports from Kai's diplomatic mission. The Rim world leaders weren't just interested. They were desperate for an alternative to the existing galactic order. "We're not conquering," Chen muttered to himself, reviewing the data. "We're offering liberation." The quantum communication network hummed with potential. Each connection was a threat to the existing power structures. Each line of code was a weapon more potent than any physical armament. In the Atacama Desert facility, Maya Okoro watched the economic and diplomatic initiatives with the scientist's analytical eye. The economic protocol wasn't just a financial tool. It was a complex system that could predict and adapt to economic shifts faster than any existing galactic technology. "We're creating an immune system for economic oppression," she told Jamal Rodriguez, who was monitoring the diplomatic initiatives. He understood immediately. This wasn't just about trade. This was about creating a new framework of interstellar interaction. As the day progressed, the first ripples of their initiative began to spread. Small trading networks started to shift. Marginal economies found new paths to growth. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained economic hierarchy began to show its first cracks. Humanity had been expelled from the Council, but they were far from powerless. In fact, they were just getting started. The void between star systems erupted in silent violence. Lieutenant Carlos Ramirez felt more machine than human inside the quantum adaptive fighter. His neural interface wasn't just a control mechanism, it was a symbiotic extension of his consciousness. The Krell Ferry believed their bioengineered warships were the pinnacle of military technology. They were about to learn otherwise. 6 Krell Ferry battlecruisers hung in space like massive predatory organisms. Each was a marvel of biological engineering. Living ships grown, rather than constructed, with adaptive armor that could regenerate damage and weapons that evolved mid-combat. They represented the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy. They were also about to become obsolete. Ramirez's fighter was smaller than a traditional spacecraft, more like a quantum probability made physical. Its exterior shifted constantly, quantum-entangled surfaces making traditional targeting systems worse than useless. Where a conventional ship would appear as a solid object, Ramirez's craft existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. "Incoming vector analysis complete," whispered the ship's eye. Not a separate system, but a collaborative intelligence that merged with Ramirez's own cognitive processes. Predictive engagement matrix at 99.7% efficiency. The first Krell Theory weapons discharge should have been instantaneous. Instead, Ramirez was already moving. His craft, sliding between quantum states faster than light, could transmit information about its previous position. Aboard the primary Krell Theory command vessel, Fleet Marshal Sartok watched in growing horror. Their most advanced targeting systems were being rendered completely ineffective. It wasn't just that the human craft was avoiding their weapons. It was like the very fabric of space was conspiring against their attack vectors. "Impossible," Sartok muttered, multiple sensory tendrils writhing with confusion. The human response wasn't just defensive. It was a systematic deconstruction of everything the Krell Theory understood about space combat. Each of Ramirez's squadron members operated with similar quantum adaptive capabilities. They weren't a traditional military formation. They were a distributed neural network, sharing tactical information at speeds that made traditional communication look like Stone Age signaling. Dr. Maya Okoro watched the combat data stream from the Atacama Desert facility. This wasn't just a battle. It was a live demonstration of humanity's technological leap. Quantum state interference is running at 412% above predicted efficiency, she reported to Colonel Jamal Rodriguez. They're not just avoiding detection. They're actively manipulating the probabilistic landscape of combat. The Krell Theory ships began to fire indiscriminately, a sign of their growing desperation. But each weapon discharge only revealed more about their systems, fed back into the human tactical network. Ramirez's fighter moved with a grace that defied traditional physics, one moment occupying a specific coordinate, the next existing as a probability spread across multiple potential locations. The Krell Theory weapon systems, designed to track and destroy solid objects, found themselves firing at mathematical ghosts. "Tactical dissolution in progress," a ship's AI reported. The language was clinical, but Ramirez understood its deeper meaning. They weren't just winning. They were rendering an entire military doctrine obsolete. One by one, the Krell Theory ships began to experience cascading systems failures, not from direct damage, but from the fundamental impossibility of tracking their target. It was as if the laws of physics themselves had been rewritten. Sartok's communication attempts became increasingly frantic. "Explain your technological deviation. This violates all known combat protocols." Ramirez's response was simple and devastating. "We don't follow your protocols." The entire engagement lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, not a single human craft had been damaged. The Krell-Thuri fleet had been completely neutralized, not destroyed, but rendered functionally extinct. Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Chen reviewed the combat logs with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. This wasn't just a military victory. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's technological philosophy. "We're not interested in conquest," Chen murmured, studying the data. "We're interested in rendering obsolete systems that no longer serve progress." As the last Krell-Thuri ships drifted powerlessly, a message was broadcast across multiple communication bands. Not a threat, not a declaration of war. Simply an invitation to reimagine what was possible. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council, but they were making it abundantly clear they would define the future on their own terms. The quantum breakthrough arrived not with a thunderous revelation, but with a series of almost imperceptible shifts, like watching a landscape transform through geological time. Dr. Maya Okoro stood perfectly still, her eyes reflecting a holographic display that looked more like a living, breathing ecosystem of data than any traditional scientific instrument. The Atacama Desert facility had gone silent, every researcher holding their collective breath. What they'd discovered wasn't just a communication breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of information itself. "It's not about transmitting data," Maya muttered, her fingers dancing across quantum-responsive interfaces. "It's about creating information that exists in multiple states simultaneously." The breakthrough had emerged from an unexpected collision of disciplines. Quantum physicists had been working alongside xenolinguists, neurobiologists collaborating with AI ethicists. The traditional boundaries of scientific research had dissolved, replaced by a holistic approach that saw knowledge as a living, adaptive system. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now leading the Scientific Strategic Initiative, understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just about faster communication. This was about creating information networks that could adapt, learn, and evolve faster than any known system in the galaxy. A soft alarm triggered. Something was attempting to penetrate their quantum shields, an alien surveillance probe more sophisticated than anything they'd encountered before. But this time, they were ready. The probe found itself caught in a quantum information web that defied traditional understanding. Instead of being blocked or destroyed, it was redirected, its own data being subtly rewritten, transformed into something entirely unexpected. "We're not just defending," Maya explained to the team. "We're turning every attempt to monitor us into an opportunity to learn." Across the facility, teams were exploring the implications of their discovery. The quantum communication network they were developing could do more than transmit information. It could predict, adapt, and fundamentally reshape communication itself. Dr. Kai Chen, who had transitioned from diplomatic strategy to theoretical information design, was particularly excited. "This isn't just a technological breakthrough," he told a group of researchers. "This is a new way of understanding connection itself." The implications were staggering. Traditional galactic communication relied on linear transmission, information moving from point A to point B. Their new system created information that existed in multiple states simultaneously, that could change its very nature based on the context of its reception. In a sealed laboratory, a team was exploring what they called adaptive linguistic matrices, communication systems that could instantaneously translate not just words, but cultural context, emotional nuance, and potential misunderstandings. Colonel Jamal Rodriguez watched the developments with a strategist's eye. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. This was a potential revolution in how civilizations could interact. "We're creating a communication immune system," he told Elena. "Something that can navigate, adapt, and transform potential conflicts before they even emerge." The quantum network began to take shape, not as a fixed infrastructure, but as a living, breathing system of information exchange. It could route around potential communication barriers, predict misunderstandings, and create bridges between fundamentally different ways of thinking. A breakthrough moment came when they successfully transmitted a complex mathematical concept through a communication matrix that simultaneously existed in multiple linguistic and conceptual states. It wasn't just translation. It was a fundamental reimagining of how information could be shared. Traditional communication is about sending a message, Maya explained during a briefing. What we're developing is more like a living conversation, one that can adapt, learn, and evolve in real time. The Galactic Council's surveillance systems continued to probe, to try to understand what humanity was developing. But with each attempt, they found themselves more confused, their traditional monitoring techniques rendered increasingly obsolete. Dr. Marcus Chen reviewed the initial reports with a sense of profound possibility. This wasn't just a technological advancement. This was a philosophical revolution. We're not just changing how we communicate, he muttered, studying the data. We're changing what communication means. As the day progressed, the quantum communication network continued to evolve. Each interaction, each attempted probe, each moment of contact became an opportunity for growth, for learning, for transformation. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council, but they were developing something far more powerful than any diplomatic credential, a way of understanding that transcended traditional boundaries. The first human-constructed galactic habitat wasn't a mere space station. It was a living, breathing testament to human potential, a mobile ecosystem that defied every conventional understanding of interstellar infrastructure. Architect Sofia Rodriguez walked through the central hub, her augmented reality interface continuously analyzing and adjusting the habitat's complex systems. Each step was a dialogue with an intelligence far beyond traditional engineering. The habitat wasn't just constructed. It was grown, engineered, and continuously evolving. Massive bioadaptive membranes created an outer shell that could instantaneously respond to environmental challenges. Radiation, absorbed and converted to energy. Micrometeorite impacts, redistributed across molecular structures before damage could occur. The habitat was more organism than structure. We're not building a station, Sofia explained to a group of visiting xenoengineers from liberated rim worlds. We're creating a living system that can survive and thrive in environments no one thought possible. The habitat's core was a marvel of quantum adaptive design. Multiple ecological zones existed simultaneously, each capable of supporting different species, each with its own microclimate that could be instantaneously modified. Where traditional space habitats were rigid and limited, this was fluid, adaptive, transformative. Deep within the habitat's central control center, Dr. Aisha Nakamura was orchestrating something far more complex than a simple space station. Her economic protocols were being integrated directly into the habitat's core systems. This wasn't just a place to live. It was a mobile economic node that could generate, redistribute, and optimize resources in real time. Watch, she told a group of skeptical Galactic Council observers who had been granted limited access. With a gesture, she demonstrated how the habitat could instantaneously redirect resources, create economic opportunities, and support emerging civilizations. A trading network from a previously marginalized star system suddenly found itself with unprecedented access to rare mineral resources. A research team from a forgotten colony gained quantum communication capabilities. The habitat wasn't just a structure. It was an active agent of economic liberation. Colonel Jamal Rodriguez oversaw the habitat's defensive capabilities. But defense was a limited term for what he had designed. The systems were more like an immune response, able to predict, adapt, and neutralize potential threats before they could fully form. Quantum-entangled sensor arrays extended the habitat's awareness far beyond traditional scanning ranges. It could detect potential conflicts, economic disruptions, even subtle shifts in interstellar political dynamics, and begin preparing adaptive responses before most systems could even register a threat. We're not building a weapon, Jamal would explain to concerned delegates. We're creating a system of proactive problem-solving. The habitat's ecological systems were equally revolutionary. Entire planetary restoration technologies were being tested and refined. Barren moons could be transformed. Toxic atmospheres could be reclaimed. Where the Galactic Council saw preservation as stasis, humanity saw it as an active, dynamic process. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived to oversee a critical integration test. The habitat was preparing to host its first multi-species diplomatic conference, not as a neutral ground, but as an active participant in the dialogue. "This isn't diplomacy as usual," she told the assembled delegates. "This is a conversation where the very environment is part of the negotiation." The habitat's linguistic adaptation systems could instantaneously provide context, predict potential misunderstandings, and create communication bridges between species that had never successfully communicated before. As the first delegates arrived, the habitat itself seemed to breathe. Atmospheric compositions subtly shifted. Gravitational zones adjusted. Lighting changed to optimize comfort for species with dramatically different physiological needs. Dr. Marcus Chen watched the preparations with a strategist's eye. This was more than a technological achievement. This was a philosophical statement about the nature of cooperation, of possibility. "We're not just building a station," he murmured. "We're demonstrating a new way of existing." Outside, the vast emptiness of space seemed to pause. The habitat hung there, not as a small point of light, but as a beacon of potential. A living system that challenged every existing understanding of what was possible. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council, but they had created something far more powerful than any diplomatic credential. A mobile universe of endless possibility. The confrontation wasn't a battle. It was a complete deconstruction of power. Archon Krelvax's communication array lit up with a cascading series of data streams that defied all known protocols. What began as a standard diplomatic transmission quickly transformed into something entirely unprecedented. Every secret, every hidden transaction, every suppressed communication from the past 3 centuries began to unravel. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the mobile diplomatic habitat, her quantum-adaptive neural interface processing information at speeds that would have been impossible just years earlier. Around her, a holographic display showed the systematic dismantling of the Galactic Council's carefully constructed facade. "Information is the ultimate equalizer," she said quietly, watching as centuries of hidden power structures collapsed in real time. The process had begun months ago, with Dr. Aisha Nakamura's economic protocols and the quantum communication networks developed in the Atacama Desert facility. But this moment was its true culmination, a comprehensive exposure of the intricate web of manipulation that had defined galactic politics for millennia. Diplomatic channels that had existed for centuries suddenly became transparent. Economic dependencies that had kept entire civilizations in perpetual subservience were laid bare. The Galactic Council's most closely guarded secrets became public knowledge in milliseconds. Kai Chen, now leading the Diplomatic Reconstruction Initiative, watched with a strategist's precision. "We're not destroying," he explained to the habitat's observing delegates. "We're creating transparency." The habitat itself was an active participant in the confrontation. Its quantum-adaptive communication systems were simultaneously translating, contextualizing, and providing nuanced historical background to every revelation. Where traditional diplomatic exchanges were linear and controlled, this was a multi-dimensional exposure of truth. Smaller civilizations watched in growing amazement. The Rim World representatives, who had long been marginalized, saw their entire history of economic oppression laid out with clinical precision. Not as an accusation, but as a comprehensive data matrix that left no room for denial. Archon Krelvax's attempts to interrupt the data flow were futile. Each attempt to block or redirect information was immediately countered, the very act of interference becoming additional evidence of systemic manipulation. Colonel Jamal Rodriguez monitored the confrontation's defensive parameters, but defense was too limited a term. This was a comprehensive system of exposure, of accountability. "We're not attacking," Jamal explained to a group of observers. "We're providing context." The quantum communication network did more than just reveal information. It provided comprehensive context, showing not just what happened, but why, how, and what the long-term implications were. Historical events were reconstructed with a level of nuance that made previous historical records look like crude sketches. Dr. Marcus Chen watched the systematic deconstruction with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. This wasn't just about exposing wrongdoing. This was about creating a new framework for interstellar interaction. Transparency is the first step toward genuine cooperation, he muttered, analyzing the data streams. The habitat's linguistic adaptation systems were working overtime, ensuring that the complex revelations could be understood by species with fundamentally different cognitive processes. What would have been incomprehensible technical jargon became a comprehensive narrative that could be understood across biological and cultural boundaries. Orcs and Krulvax's communication attempts became increasingly frantic. The carefully constructed hierarchies, the hidden economic manipulations, the systematic suppression of emerging civilizations, all of it was being exposed with ruthless efficiency. This violates every established protocol. Krulvax's communication tentacles writhed in digital panic. Elena's response was calm and devastating. "We're not interested in your protocols. We're interested in truth." As the exposure continued, something unexpected began to happen. It wasn't just the Galactic Council being dismantled. A new framework of interaction was emerging. Not through force, but through comprehensive understanding. Smaller civilizations began to see their own histories with new clarity. Economic dependencies were revealed, but so were paths to genuine self-determination. The exposure wasn't just destructive, it was fundamentally reconstructive. The habitat systems continued to process, to contextualize, to provide pathways for understanding and potential cooperation. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council, but they were demonstrating a new way of existing, one built on transparency, understanding, and genuine possibility. As the final data streams resolved, a new question hung in the interstellar void. What comes next? 5 years after their expulsion, humanity had become something entirely unexpected. The Cooperative Alliance wasn't an empire. It wasn't even a traditional governing body. It was a living, breathing network of possibility that defied every conventional understanding of interstellar civilization. From the observation deck of the central mobile habitat, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as ships from dozens of civilizations move with a fluidity that would have been impossible just years earlier. Each vessel represented not just a technological achievement, but a story of liberation, of potential realized. Dr. Marcus Chen joined her, his years of diplomatic strategy etched into the lines of his face. "We didn't conquer," he said, more to himself than to Elena. "We invited." The transformation had been subtle yet profound. Where the Galactic Council had maintained power through control, the Cooperative Alliance operated on principles of shared innovation, transparent collaboration, and mutual growth. Nearby, Dr. Aisha Nakamura was overseeing the latest economic integration protocols. What had begun as a radical economic system was now a dynamic framework that allowed emerging civilizations to participate in galactic resources with unprecedented equity. "It's not about redistribution," Aisha explained to a group of young researchers. "It's about creating ecosystems of opportunity." The habitat itself had become more than a mobile diplomatic center. It was a living testament to human potential, a constantly evolving system that could adapt to the needs of multiple species, generate resources, and mediate complex interstellar challenges. Colonel Jamal Rodriguez monitored the habitat's defensive systems, though defensive was hardly an accurate description. These were adaptive intelligence networks that could predict and transform potential conflicts before they could fully form. A communication came through from the Rim World representatives, civilizations that had once been marginalized, now key partners in the most dynamic interstellar collaborative network in known history. Dr. Maya Okoro was finalizing the latest quantum communication breakthrough. Their network was no longer just a communication system. It was a collective intelligence that could process, understand, and bridge gaps between fundamentally different ways of thinking. "We're creating a universal translator," Maya told a group of Sinolinguists. But it's more than language. It's about understanding. The habitat's ecological restoration projects had transformed entire star systems. Planets once considered uninhabitable were now thriving ecosystems. But it wasn't colonization. It was collaborative planetary development, with each civilization contributing its unique perspective. Kai Chen, now leading the Alliance's Diplomatic Innovation Division, was preparing for the most ambitious project yet, a comprehensive galactic knowledge exchange that would make all previous information sharing look like primitive communication. Knowledge isn't a resource to be hoarded, Kai explained during a strategy session. It's a living system that grows through sharing. The ships outside moved with a grace that spoke to a fundamental shift. These weren't military vessels or trade routes. They were collaborative networks, each journey an opportunity for mutual understanding, for shared discovery. A young researcher approached Elena, her eyes bright with the kind of possibility that had always defined humanity's best moments. "How did we get here?" she asked. Elena smiled. The answer was complex, yet simple. We chose to see potential where others saw limitations. We understood that true strength isn't about control, it's about connection. The quantum adaptive displays around the habitat showed a living map of interstellar interactions. It was nothing like the rigid political boundaries of the past. This was a dynamic, breathing network of possibilities. Dr. Chen looked out at the star field, thinking about the journey. They hadn't conquered. They hadn't destroyed. They had simply demonstrated a different way of existing. "We were banned from the Galactic Council," he murmured, "and we built something far greater." As if in response, the habitat's systems hummed, a subtle vibration that felt almost like anticipation. Not of conflict, not of conquest, but of what might come next. The stars outside seemed to pulse with a different kind of light. Not the cold, distant illumination of the past, but something warmer, something that suggested endless possibility. Humanity had been banned from the Galactic Council, and they had reimagined everything.